pre-election cash splash. He joins us now from Canberra. Treasurer, good morning to you. Thanks for your time this morning. It was a big night last night. Are you Treasurer of the decade after tripling debt over 10 years?
Well, what we are delivering is one of the strongest economic recoveries anywhere in the world, Karl. Faster and stronger than the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, France, Germany, Italy and Japan. We're on the cusp of a 50-year low for the unemployment rate. That's not just numbers on the page. That's actually people being able to find work. And indeed, the biggest issue now for businesses is to get more workers and the job shortages that they're finding. So there is a very strong story to tell, with wages strengthening, with unemployment lower, with growth higher, and of course we've also banked the dividend of that stronger economy, with the bottom line improving by more than $100 billion.
Clearly, though, inflation hangs heavily over the country. How is anything in the budget actually going to quantifiably decrease inflation?
Well, the cut to the fuel excise, Treasury says, will actually decrease inflation by 1/4 percentage point. And as you know, the number one topic around the kitchen tables of Australia right now is cost of living. And fuel prices being at over $2 a litre is one of those top pressures. And so that's why we've taken the decision, just like Ireland, just like New Zealand, just like France, just like Germany and other countries have done, to actually cut those petrol taxes so that the cost of living relief can be provided to Australians at the time when they need it most. So we've heard their concerns, we've responded and acted in the budget, but we've done so in a temporary and a targeted and a responsible way. And we've also laid out our plan for future jobs and growth across the economy. More investment in our regions, more investment in skills. We've been backing small business with 2 very significant tax measures. And of course, we continue to guarantee the essential services. And we had some very powerful stories last night about more investment in women's safety, listing more drugs on the PBS, for example, to deal with breast cancer, as well as a whole lot of other measures.
I think that's all incredibly positive. You're saying that cutting the fuel excise will actually reduce inflation, but you can't guarantee those savings will actually get passed on. You don't have any control over international supply and costs. How can you guarantee families will even notice this difference?
Because fuel excise will be cut by more than 22 cents a litre. That will be passed on to motorists. The cop on the beat is the ACCC. They've made a very clear statement last night that if retailers in the fuel space are engaging in misleading and deceptive conduct, then they can face contraventions of up to $10 million. And we know that fuel excise is a big part of the cost of petrol. You're also right, though, that international factors are at play here. It's a volatile situation, but this cut to the fuel excise will reduce petrol prices by more than 22 cents.
Treasurer, you're also giving workers this $1,500 tax cut this year and abolishing it, though, next year. Doesn't that mean you're actually increasing tax for 10 million Australians?
No, we're not. We're actually cutting taxes, and that's what a coalition government is elected to do. And some $40 billion of tax relief has been provided, Karl, since the start of the pandemic. The low and middle income tax offset was originally designed to be temporary. It was a fiscal stimulus measure. So we announced it in last year's budget, and it was available to people from the 1st of July this year. We've added to that an extra $420, recognising the cost of living pressures. So if you are earning $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 or $90,000, you will get $1,500 in your pocket from the 1st of July or when you put in your tax return. If you're a couple who earns 2 incomes, you'll get $3,000. That's a very significant boost at a time when families do need that extra support.
OK, you've had years to actually work on structural reform to tax and make big decisions like the Howard government did with the GST. There's nothing in this budget. You've squibbed it, not just 6 months, but beyond, not just election, but beyond. Why haven't you done that?
Well, to take issue with you there, Karl, we've actually legislated the abolition of a whole tax bracket, 37 cents in the 37 cents in the dollar. So 95% of Australian taxpayers will be paying no more than 30 cents in the dollar. That's real structural reform. It was stage 3 of a plan that we articulated, that we took to the Australian people, that they voted on at the last election, and now we have legislated, and Labor was fighting us every step of the way. So that is, to answer your question, real significant structural reform to our tax system. It becomes fairer, it becomes simpler, it will reward aspiration, reward hard work, and it delivers more money into people's pockets, because that is what a Liberal and National coalition does.
Okay, what happens in 6 months beyond where this budget is planning, even post-election? You say wages will naturally go up. Are you saying this morning that under a coalition government, you're guaranteeing wages will go up?
Well, what Treasury printed last night in the budget papers was that elevated inflation rate this year, driven by those international factors, higher food, higher fuel prices, obviously accelerated by what's happening in the Ukraine, but then inflation would start to moderate, and wages, as that tight labour market saw employers competing for employees, would start to see a lift in wages growth. That is a good sign. In fact, in last year's... Well, what I can tell you is that we're doing everything to put upward pressure on wages, and we're also putting in place a long-term economic plan to create more jobs, with further investments in our regions, further investments in infrastructure, further investments in small business. I mean, last night, Karl, more than 3 million small businesses will now get further tax incentives to train their workers and to invest in digital technology, whether it's new computers or hardware and software. So that's a really good announcement that will help strengthen the economy.
I'm just not sure that there was any relief in terms of inflationary pressures on small businesses that we saw last night. You really did have a swagger about you last night, Treasurer. The country in the numbers is going well. Some of that you have an absolute right to swagger about, but will it be enough to get you re-elected, do you think?
Well, what it is an underlying confidence in the resilience of the Australian economy. I mean, the last 2 years, Karl, we have thrown the kitchen sink at ensuring that we see a strong recovery. Let's not forget, your viewers certainly won't forget, the images of hundreds of thousands of our fellow Australians lining up outside Centrelink in March and April 2020, which for many were scenes reminiscent of the Great Depression. There was huge fear across the community. Small businesses closed their doors and thought they would never open them again. We responded with programs like JobKeeper, which helped save the economy, and now we've seen one of the strongest economic recoveries in the world. And with more people in work, that means people can provide for their families, and that's real confidence for the future.
Gee, the PM's got a big team behind you. I didn't realise he had that many people. He's like a small business behind the Prime Minister. We'll let you go. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it, Treasurer.
Karl,
it's a real entourage, that, wasn't it?